Hey everybody, welcome back to me ranting about my life, me and my awkward self. I am finally continuing my first video about meeting my ex-husband. I actually had to rewatch it and remember what I said because it's been so long. Life has been crazy. Let's get back into it. So I left off on the first video, and if you haven't watched it, I'll link it, whatever, whoever's interested. I left off telling my parents that I had decided I was going to go to EA instead of BYU Idaho, and that I had met this guy. So that all happened. And that weekend, Peter and I, were texting. That's what you do. You text every day, all day when you're interested in somebody. And this generation, that's kind of how you know, if they text you, whatever. And he had told me, he's like, oh, I'm coming back down next weekend to hang out with some friends if you want to go on a date. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Text all week. And then I remember one day, I think because I was always texting first or something. And I was like, I'm going to change things up. If this dude really wants to talk to me, then he'll text me first, which girls can relate to this. That's what we do. And, I remember, I didn't get a text till 2 in the afternoon, and he was like, are you mad at me? Did I do something? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, no, I just was waiting on you to text me this time. And, yeah, all that good, fun, flirting stuff. We get to the weekend, closer to the weekend, and he's like, hey, can you possibly pick me up? My friends are going to Mesa, and where we live is before Mesa, coming from EA. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Not totally awkward at all. And set up this whole thing. And I remember I was working at Charlotte Russe at the time. Ooh. And I thought I was so cool. And I remember purposely that day I got all ready for work because I was going to be picking him up after, and did my hair all cute, and then going to pick him up, I was getting so nervous. It was so awkward. And I meet him at the gas station where he gets dropped off. And mind you, this is the second time I've ever seen him in person. And it was really awkward. And he gave me this weird side hug. And I'm the kind of person that I'm if you're gonna hug me, give me a real hug. I love hugs. I don't like handshakes. I think it's super awkward. So I'm a hugger. Yeah. And so that was awkward. And I remember I'm driving my dad's truck again, and I have my arm purposely on the middle console. I guess it's a guy thing to do, but I do it too. Cause to me it's if you wanna hold my hand, hold my hand. And so I don't remember if he did or not. I don't remember. Okay, I don't remember that part, but I remember then after the awkward 10-15 minute drive, we went to my parents' house first because I had to introduce him. And we had planned our date to go to the mud bogs. If you don't know what mud bogs is, it's trucks mudding, and I think there was some drag racing that night too. It's just some fun cool thing we were gonna go to, and I had never been, and it was kind of newer out by where we live. So, and I had never been, and nobody ever wanted to go with me, and he was like, oh, totally go. And I think that impressed him of I wanted to go to the mud bogs. And so we get to my parents' house, and as soon as we get out of the truck, he pulls me in and lays it on me, this big heavy kiss. And I was like, where has this been? Oh, okay. And then after that, I had to awkwardly go take him inside to meet my parents. It's just all flustered and whoa, okay. I guess you like me. And we walk in, and my mom was in the kitchen, and I introduced him to her, and I went out in the backyard for some reason. I think my dad was out there. I don't know. And I walk back in, and Peter, I almost call him by his real name, which a lot of people know who he is, but whatever. I walk back in and like briefly talk to my mom, tell her what we're gonna do, and then I think Peter walks back out to the truck, and my mom turns to me and she's like, Haley, he is so nice. Like, that was her way of telling me, like, don't screw this up. Because, as I'll get into later, I do not have the best track record with guys. But anyways, yeah, and I was just like, okay, thanks, Mom. And we go, I think, from there, I think I took him to his parents' house because he had to go to a family wedding. I think this was like a Friday, and then like Saturday night we were gonna go to the Mud Box. So yeah, did that whole thing. I think hung out for a minute, and I was like, okay, like see you tomorrow. Or no, I'm so sorry. This is all over the place. It has been 4 or 5 years since I've thought about all of this. So that night he goes to a wedding reception. I went to a movie night and invited him to come hang out after. So he comes and hangs out after, and we cuddle and all that. Yeah, so Mormon. And it was a good night, hung out a little bit more. He went home, I went home. Then the next night is the Mud Bogs. And I had invited my friend Heidi out, and John had another friend down, and we kind of did like a double date thing. And we took my truck, and so Mudbox was our first date, official date. And we go, we're having a good time, and me and him were super like physical really fast. Not necessarily in a bad way, but I remember I felt so bad for my friend because I feel like we kind of just kept ditching her, but his brother was going to be there too with his girlfriend, and I was going to meet him and her, and I remember, we're enjoying watching it and everything, like, he's got his arms around me and all that, and it was kind of cold. I mean, Arizona doesn't really get cold, but then at this time at night it gets colder, so we're all like snuggled up in his big Carhartt, and we went to my truck for some reason. Oh, I think it was because I was super, super cold. And this was like after briefly meeting his brother, who looks nothing like him. Like, side note, like, it's just crazy how different him and his brother are, because Peter, like I mentioned before, he's 6'4", like 300-pound dude, but like he's not fat. Like, he's a good looking guy. Like, he holds himself very, very well. He's just like a big protector dude, and I really liked that about him. I'm small, like I'm short, like 5'2", 5'3", so I loved that he was taller than me. Anyways, so him and his brother are so polar opposites. His brother was almost 7 foot, dark hair. Like, I was like, that's your brother? Like, are you guys like half brothers? And I hadn't met his parents yet, so obviously now I'm like, okay, I see where you guys get your looks from. So met his brother really briefly. It was super awkward because I'm just awkward. And then we go back to my truck because I'm cold, and we just, start making out and all that. Like, we missed a lot of the Mud Bogs because we wanted like one-on-one time, which, who doesn't? You're in a new relationship, you're discovering each other, whatever. But mind you, he was a returned missionary. I born and raised Mormon, so was he. He had been home probably 18 months when he met me. Me, on the other hand, I've always struggled in the LDS Mormon community with being good, being chaste. Not like being chaste, but like, and I'll be the first to admit that, because it's always been very hard for me in the church community, knowing that like I made mistakes, that I struggled, that I was too comfortable sometimes, because it was drilled in me to not be comfortable with the opposite sex. So, and at this point, I had been hurt like a lot and recently, and hurt in that aspect of like feeling like I was used primarily for my body. And so at this point, when I met Peter, I was trying really hard to be better about like respecting myself and not so easily like falling into the routine of like, oh, this is what they want. Like, this is how it works. And I know in his heart, he's not like that. He was not like that. I think, well, I know he had never met somebody like me. And when I say that, I don't mean to talk poorly about myself. I just mean somebody that was not by the book, never did anything wrong, never made mistakes. Because I definitely had by this point. And he, for me, was a first of, he's so solid, like so solid with church, like just a good person. And I knew that about him. I knew he had done no wrong. I knew that he was a sweetheart and that he was good to his core. So I also mentally kind of made the decision that I didn't want to hurt him in that way. I didn't want to allow him to take that path with me because I didn't want to be that girl that messed it up for him, if that makes sense. Again, it kind of sounds like I'm talking poorly about myself, but we were just different in that way. And so anyways, that was kind of a sidetrack. So, back and forth to the truck a lot, all touchy-feely, kind of getting to know each other. Then that night, the four of us, me, Peter, Heidi, and Peter's friend, go back to my house, watch a movie. Peter and I are on the couch, get super, super touchy-feely. And it got to a point to where I kind of went into autopilot, is the best way to put it. I have a lot of healing and a lot of damage that I am working through. And that is another reason why I do these videos, is to hear myself talk about it and to also come to realizations and to remind myself of mistakes that I made, what I've gone through, and how I am moving forward from that, and not being that girl that's broken and hurt and so only falls back to those kinds of actions, if that probably doesn't even make sense to whoever watches this. Anyways, so yeah, I went into autopilot of like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do, this is probably what he wants. And I think I knew, well, now, later, I know, because me and him talked about that night, continuing our relationship and, getting married and all that. We talked about that night, and he kind of asked me questions about that night and why I did and didn't do certain things, and I had to explain that I had been used and hurt in so many ways that in my brain, I would fall back to, this is what they want. This is what he wants for me. This is why he's here. This is why he's showing interest. When he wasn't. Peter was different, and I knew that. And I think that's why one of the reasons I fell in love with him was I knew he didn't want that from me. And I, for a long time, felt so bad about that night because I was like, I should have stopped it. Which he did. Back to the story, he stopped me. I won't go into detail of what was happening, but I'll never forget that, because at first I was offended. Of like, you don't want this? Like, am I not good enough? Like, not if, am I not good enough, but like, we got this far and you're gonna stop me? Like, kind of being a brat, like, about it, mentally thinking. And then later on I realized, like, no, he was the adult, and he stopped it before we entered into a point of a relationship that we didn't need to be in yet. And I really respect him and appreciate him for that. But as the story goes on, there's more behind it and more situations that arose. And I guess not situations, but more kind of from this story of our first date and interaction or whatever. It leads to a really, really big conflict in our relationship that was continuous from the time we were dating until we got divorced. And I'll probably get into that next video. But yeah, that was kind of the quick story of our first date. It probably sounds so bad. But at this point in our relationship, we were still getting to know each other. We rushed into things really, really fast. Like you meet on a Sunday, you go out the next week. Well, and in between then, you're talking and texting, and I decided I was going to go to school where he was going. And, within like the next couple weeks after this, I met his family. Oh, not even after this. Yeah, I met his family probably a week or two after this, like whole family. And I'll get into that into the next video. But yeah, I need to start writing down my thoughts before I do these because I'm so jumbled. But I had a lot of people kind of asking, like, when are you going to do your next video? When are you going to do your next video? And I hope this sufficed. I had the time today and I wanted to sit down and continue with it. Moral of this story is take your time. Really get to know somebody and really don't lose yourself just because you think everybody is the same, because they're not. And you will meet those gems that actually genuinely like want to get to know you and not just use you. And I think that's, me and him struggled a lot in the beginning because it was very different for me. He wanted to get to know me mind, body, and soul, and not just body. And like I said, I think that was one of the beginning things that I started falling in love for him at that point. But yeah, I will try to be better about posting and not being so jumbled. And I appreciate those, again, who have reached out, who talked to me about it, who respect me and are understanding of these videos and why I do it. And a disclaimer, I do not ever, 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 ever mean to offend, harm, speak ill will of somebody. That's not my intention at all. This is me talking through my thoughts and talking through what I've been through the past 5-ish years. I mean, I'll go into high school, but it's more for me. Please, 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 anybody who watches this that knows these people, do not contact them, because if I find out, like, it's gonna be a big deal, and I will personally contact you and figure out what your intentions were by doing that. Because this is my life and my story, nobody else's, and nobody else deserves to have any backlash at all from anything that I say. And I try to monitor and be respectful and hide identities. So yeah, with that, I'm gonna end this video. I will link sounds so cool. I'll link the other videos if you're interested in watching of how this all started. Yeah, thanks everybody.